The redrawing of legislative districts has created challenging election contests. On Hawaiʻi Island, incumbent Laura Acasio faces Wil Okabe in the Democratic primary for District 1 that includes Hilo. On Oʻahu, there is no incumbent in Senate District 19, which includes portions of Pearl City and Waipahu. State Representative Henry Aquino faces newcomer Roger Clemente in the Democratic primary. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. Every 10 years, the boundaries of elected political districts are redrawn to reflect population changes. Known as reapportionment, this can create, alter, or even eliminate districts across the state. Both of tonight's featured races have been affected by reapportionment. We'll hear from candidates for District 19 on Oʻahu later in the program, but up first tonight, the candidates vying for the Democratic nomination for District 1 seat on Hawaiʻi Island, which now stretches from ʻEwa to Pepe'ekeo. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests. Laura Acasio was appointed to the District 1 seat last year by Governor David Ige. Prior to serving, she spent more than 2 decades as a teacher and substitute teacher with the Department of Education. Wil Okabe is a retired educator with the DOE. He also served as the president of the Hawaii State Teachers Association Union. Most recently, he was Hawaii County's managing director under former Mayor Harry Kim. Not appearing tonight because of a scheduling conflict is State Senator Lorraine Inouye. She serves District 4, but reapportionment changed her district number. Thank you both for being here in person tonight. We appreciate your presence. I want to start with you. What do you think is the biggest issue in your district, and what do you want to do to help it?
Constituents in my district cite homelessness and housing crisis as our #1 issue in the district. And we, as a member of the Senate Human Services Committee, we've been working on getting funding for ohana zones to create, I kind of approach it in a multifaceted way, but definitely 2-pronged at least. A triage of addressing the immediate needs within our community of those who need shelter and the support services around them. And then simultaneously looking towards building longer-term, affordable, permanent shelters and housing for folks who are experiencing houselessness. And been working collaboratively with county, state, even our federal delegation in addressing these issues, but looking more away from managing homelessness towards ending homelessness. And so collaboratively working with organizations in our community, nonprofits who are already on the ground, boots on the ground, serving the community and providing support services, learning their needs, expanding, helping to expand their programs and fund that expansion, and really engaging with the county and the community, especially those who need those services. And we really fundamentally, the more we support that and prevent those who are at risk of homelessness as well, we actually save money in the long run.
Mr. Okabe, what do you think is the most important issue in the district, and what would you do to resolve it?
Thank you for inviting me to this forum. I think that one of the most important things for us during the pandemic was health services. Our aging population in the Hilo district is very evident during the pandemic because we had to hire people to come in from the mainland, nurses, to help with the pandemic. And if you remember that when the pandemic hit, a lot of the veterans died at the Veterans Hospital, and the county was not able to address that situation early on in the pandemic. So I think that was a very telling story that the doctors in Hawaii has to be one of the foremost important part in the Hilo district. But because we only have one hospital in Hilo that accommodates Puna, also up to Honoka, but Honoka also has a hospital in Waimea. I think that the average age of the doctors are in their late 60s and 70s. So we have to have the opportunity to try to recruit and retain doctors in Hilo in order to address the need for healthcare. You know, Laura mentioned about the homelessness. Yes, we have a homelessness problem. Every island and throughout the nation there is homeless problems. But I think one of the most important things is that the County of Hawaii, when I was managing director, we tried to address that by renovating the old hospital in Hilo to be able to have a site where the homeless can go and where the officers could bring the homeless to have a place to stay. But consistency in regards to trying to make sure that the police officers or people are always going to the homeless to ask them if they need help. Mental services and also psychiatry just was recently mentioned in the Hilo Tribune. That's one of the areas that that Hilo needs to have, because you know that mental illness is part of the homelessness problem. And affordable housing, as Laura mentioned, it is a concern. But when we talk about affordable housing, what is affordable? I mean, right now in Hilo last month, 35% increase. So now the median home in Hilo area is $538,000. So, you know, the neighbor behind me bought a lot, a 16,000 square foot lot that cost $265,000. Unheard of in Hilo, right? My neighbor next to me just moved to Honolulu, and her home just sold within a week, $600,000. If the median range for family is $80,000, how can they afford to have affordable housing? So as Laura mentioned, affordable housing has many facets, not only owning a home, but it also is in regards to renting a home. So state housing for the people who are most needed for state housing, right? So you have the middle class in Hawaii Coast Street, along with Inouye Drive. We have a situation in the 70s and the 80s, there was a project by state housing that middle income people could buy these homes. But they had to have a caveat that had to stay in the home for at least 10 years. Those are kind of things that the state needs to invest in order to address affordable housing.
Okay. I want to hear your thoughts also on the medical components that he brought in. He weighed in on housing and homelessness. What are your thoughts? Because he does bring up a good point that there is a large aging population in that district, reliant really on just a few services.
Absolutely. Needs to be bolstered, and like he mentioned, you know, retaining our rural physicians and even access to services. So we continue to support Hilo Medical Center in expanding their services, and I know that on the list of things that they have coming up is the new ICU, as well as potentially a birthing center coming up, and that's very big for us here in Hilo. I did want to also mention absolutely agree that we need mental health care services, and we need to expand licensure so that we can have interns that are licensed and have graduated with a master's working under mental health care providers, so that, you know, those who go to school at UH Hilo, for example, and get their degree in social services can be providers, because right now what we're hearing from the providers very loud and clear is that they have way more clients than they can serve. They're at max capacity, and they could serve more people if they had that. And then that also then makes so that folks don't need to leave island in order to make a living immediately in that one-year licensure phase. So things like that, but also that we need drug abuse rehabilitation centers on our islands, small scale, distributed, so that in the rural areas we have access to that. Because
on that point, you know, Hawaii Island police have sounded the alarm about a large amount of fentanyl that is flooding into that community. What do you think that the state government can do to help law enforcement when it comes to, you know, that very destructive drug?
Oh, wow. That's an excellent question. We definitely have to do everything we in our power to address that. One of the first things that I do as a as a state senator, is call together meetings with stakeholders and folks who are versed in that subject matter, and pull in all the resources that we can and learn all of these collaborative ways that we can address the issue, because we know that the health and safety of our entire community, but especially our youth, are at stake, and we absolutely need to take it very seriously.
What do you think about how we better address the drug issues on Hawaiʻi Island, especially when you look at, Hawaiʻi Island police talking specifically about large amounts of fentanyl in the community?
Well, I think the governor just passed a bill to have a state police, in the budget. So therefore, that should also assist the county police. There is a very big distinction. As a managing director, you have county and now you have state police. So that should complement each other to also monitor this drug problem that we have. At one time, crystal meth on the Big Island was one of the largest distributor of crystal meth on the Big Island. The Big Island now is 200,000 people on the Big Island. It's the second largest compared to Oʻahu, is over 1 million people. So therefore, we have to address those things in order for us to stay safe. I know that you've been reading things in the newspaper, on TV, that we're having a lot of crime, just like in Oʻahu. People are stabbing people. People do not feel safe in their communities. So we have to recruit and retain police officers as well. Right. But how do we do that? One of the things that we need to do as a solution is that we need to look at opportunities to look at maybe the GET tax, income tax, to be able to recruit the best and the brightest in law enforcement, as I mentioned before, in doctors. We're the only, there's about 5 states in the nation that still require medical services in regards to giving them, taking GET taxes from the doctors. If you're going to try to recruit doctors, police officers, whether it's teachers or any professional group, you have to try to insensitize them to be able to work with private, public, and also county and state to be able to bring these doctors in to our District 1, and for that matter, to the whole state of Hawaii. But we're in desperate need because of our population and because of our size of the Big Island. Lungi, that all the islands can fit on the Big Island, and even more, we have more land. So therefore, the size alone causes an economic problem for the people that live on the Big Island.
Well, I want to ask you about another kind of crime that we've been hearing a lot about, and that is agricultural theft. It's something, when you were a kid, maybe you took a mango from the neighbor, but now we have large-scale theft of, entire harvests on Hawaiʻi Island. What do you think can be done? Because as you mentioned, it is such a large community. It's very hard to patrol those areas. What would you do to help the farmers who are experiencing this kind of loss?
Well, first of all, I was a farmer. And my parents were farmers here in Oʻahu, and we were chrysanthemum farmers. When I moved to the Big Island, my wife had a farm, and I started raising anthuriums at a 10-acre farm. But because it's so vast, policing in the Puna area where I used to have my farm was a very difficult situation, because by the time the police officer was able to get to the farms, they would be gone because it's so vast. And at one time in the Puna area, people were just chopping down the papaya trees for no reason. I think you might have heard about that. Just got the canine, just started acres and acres just chopping it down. But the farmers in Kapoho at that time didn't have any resolution to be able to keep their crops safe because it's so vast. So the only way you can do it is community policing, to have the neighborhood watch, to be able to engage the community to be able to do that. Even at our homes, I have the Ring, right? You can see it on your phone. So therefore, those kind of things in neighborhoods, when you're off island, they'll be able to help to monitor the situation.
What do you think we can do to help support farmers on this particular issue? We know that they need broad support all over, but on this issue, Hawaiʻi Island is particularly challenged.
Yes, absolutely. Especially we do have a lot of agriculture, and we hope to be bolstering that in many ways so that we can support the rest of the islands in terms of food production and sustaining our own food production. So, as Wil had mentioned, definitely bolstering community policing and neighborhood watch, but one of the things that ties into housing is that small dwellings, farm dwellings on agricultural land can be permitted. And we're not talking about these large gentleman estates that really actually should not necessarily be on agriculture land and using agriculture land tax exemptions when they aren't necessarily producing a significant, an amount of food or agriculture for our community. However, having these small farm dwellings allows people to be present a lot more. It also addresses, especially if we can allow, if the state and the counties can help incentivize assisting with mortgage, for example, because then we can address some of the shortages that he mentioned with our police force or our teaching, our teachers who desperately need to be able to afford housing in our communities. But these small dwellings really can help in terms of adding eyes and families to the land in order to help, watch what's going on.
We always like to bring in questions from the audience. Punilani has this question. As a mom, I notice a lot of the playgrounds are outdated and need to be upgraded. What can you do in your district to help with this problem? I think it's not just the playgrounds, it's facilities all over. It's infrastructure, I would venture to say statewide, but particularly in your district. So what do you say to Punilani on the playground issue and also on the broader issue of infrastructure upgrades?
Yes, absolutely. That's something that we've been focusing greatly on. And a lot of times we find that folks will say, this is a county issue. Something that I bring to the table is that I will never say that's a county issue and then leave it at that. Everything becomes our collective issue in terms of how we make our communities thrive and be better, be more resilient, come out of, we do have a quite depressed economy, and a lot of our infrastructure is dilapidating, one of which is the wastewater treatment facility. Again, even though it's run by the county, we still have to look towards the state for matching funds so that we can then get matching funds from the federal government with the Build Back Better and the infrastructure monies. And so this is a very similar thing where we can pool our resources and our energies and our collaboration in terms of coming up with creative solutions. Economic drivers in our community are really important, and so we need to be reaching into innovative and new ways to create jobs, and this is all part of that. So really to address that is just to continue to work collaboratively with county, with stakeholders, and with our federal delegation as well to bring in those funds that we need to improve our infrastructure.
What do you say to Punilani about the playgrounds that she has in her neighborhood, but also about this infrastructure issue overall?
Well, Punilani is correct, and Laura did mention that county and state. When you talk, probably she's talking about a county facility. And this is why, as a managing director of the County of Hawaii, we were opposed to the legislature taking away the TAT tax. Mm-hmm. Because the county only has three sources of income: weight tax, fuel tax, and property tax. Those are the three. And we had the TAT tax. So when we talk about collaboration between the county and the state, there needs to be discussions with the mayor and the Park and Recreation director to be able to work cohesively to be able to address what she's talking about. Because most of the playgrounds in my district, in District 1, your district as well, are run by the counties. State parks do not have, they have just a field like in Wailoa State Park. You have down in Pepekeo, there's another park, Wailoa State Park. All of these parks, there are certain, but the playgrounds, when you're talking about those kind of things, it's county. But there needs to be a very big communication and also dialogue between state and county. There is a differentiation between the two levels.
We have actually less than 10 minutes to talk.
Oh, already?
I know, it goes so fast. So I want to get away from this for just a second and ask a few personal questions just so that the viewers have a better sense of you if they haven't gotten to meet you in person. Tell us a little bit about why you want this job and what you think distinguishes you from the other two opponents that you have in this race.
I think it's the experience that I have. Like I mentioned to you, I've been a farmer. I'm a retired teacher, a certified retired teacher. And I was the president of the Hawaii State Teachers Association that took 25 years of my life being an officer in the organization. Also working as a governor's liaison for Governor Inouye in East Hawaii and being the managing director for the County of Hawaii gives me a lot of experiences and gives me the opportunity to understand and to be able to communicate things with people that I've worked with throughout the years. It is a very difficult job. You know, teachers have a very difficult job as well. But this particular job as a senator, we need to address the situation that is at hand in regards to corruption in government. The community wants change. It is time that we, as leadership, try to make changes within the government to be able to restore confidence in our lawmakers.
You've been in this seat for about a year now, a little more than that, rather. Why do you want to keep it, and what about your experiences in, you know, leading up to this point? You think, what strengths do you bring to this job?
Yes, so 17 years as a teacher, as an educator, many years as a birth support worker. So I attend births with new families and help give them support, and being able to be calm under pressure and be able to communicate clearly and concisely in those times where a lot of things can happen and go in very different directions. That's really important in terms of bringing just a real sense of security. And, you know, these past 2 years I've learned, or a year and a half in the Senate now, and I still have about a half a year to finish out. And I really love this job, to be honest. Like the networking and the getting to know the needs of my community very intimately, because you know, our constituents are, if I've been reaching out to them on a regular basis, and as they call my office, I always return their phone calls and make sure to connect them with the resources that they need and the information that they're asking for. And so that's built, I've been living in Hilo for 20 years, and so having those relationships in our community and knowing where to reach out when you know, we need information, and really important for this job. I, just like Wil had mentioned, I'm really here to make sure that our community has a choice, and that being that I'm taking, doing the partial public funding and committing to a cap on my campaign contribution or my campaign spending, and not taking corporate money and money from large landowners or anything that would be even misconstrued in any possible way as a conflict of interest for the decisions that I make as a legislator. I feel like that's really important. I feel like transitioning right now with all of the attention being on the corrupting influence of money in politics, it's even more important than ever to choose our candidates that aren't beholden to big money and don't have a track record of that, because we need to have things in the legislature like Sunshine Law. When the legislature passed the Sunshine Law, they exempted themselves. And so they are the only state agency right now that can make decisions behind closed doors where the public does not get to see who and why are making those decisions. And so I think things like that, campaign finance reform, very important. So yeah.
We have just 3 minutes, so that's the opportunity basically for one more question. And I'm interested, I grew up on the Big Island, not in your district, but on the other side. And I think that people who are from there love it, they want to stay, but you mentioned economic opportunity, you mentioned the high cost of housing. It's a very hard place to stay and to thrive economically for a lot of folks. So I'm interested to hear from each of you in this role, what you would do to make sure that people who are from Hawaii Island get to stay there and thrive.
I think I've lived there from 1978, so I've been there for 45 years. And one of the reasons why, just like you, it was a great place to raise a family. You know, it was safe. In those days, back in the 70s and early 80s, nobody locked their doors to their home or their cars. Crime was very low, and everybody worked together. And I think that it changed. People are not safe. I said, we have seniors that are not safe. We have, 3 senior housing. One, EAH, I think, is going to be building one on Kauili Street across from Waikea High School. It's going to have 90 two units for the senior citizens. You know, those are the things that we need. We need to have an opportunity to have affordable housing, but making sure that we change laws, maybe like even a mobile home, to have a discussion between county and state to change the law. Because not everybody can afford a home, not everybody can rent, but if they want to own a home, we might have to look at that.
Okay. We have about a minute left.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on how we can make sure that people who want to stay on that island can and can thrive economically?
Yes, I think we really need to put our resources towards supporting our cultural practitioners and our farmers in building capacity around local food for local production, including value-added products that are specifically from Hilo, which is an incredibly special place. And you know, that really gives me the drive to do this work, and diving into you know, innovative opportunities for resource recovery within our community that we could just continue to build on. And yeah, that's really important for us to continue to focus on all the very ways that we can. We're looking at some pipelines, in addition to what Mr. Okabe said, some pipelines from our schools, our public schools in Hilo directly towards University of Hawaii in terms of engineering and, you know, robotics and science and STEM. So I think a big capacity to build on is our education. We have some phenomenal teachers in our community as throughout all of Hawaii, and so to really engage them and you know, have that be part of the innovation that we see in our community.
Okay, the half hour goes fast. We want to thank Senate District 1 Democratic candidates Wil Okabe and Laura Acasio for joining us tonight. Please enjoy this Hiki no story from Hilo High School. It's a good one. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hidden in Hilo's backyard is the Wailuku River. This river holds many stories and tales that become part of Hawaiian culture, one of which is the mo'olelo of boiling pots.
Here we are at Boiling Pots, or where the Battle of the Wailuku River took place. This story contains Hina, Maui, Pele, and the giant mo'o, or lizard, Kuna. So basically, Hina was living in the cave behind Rainbow Falls, and the mo'o, Kuna, came in and tried to take her over. So Hina asked her son, Maui, to get rid of the mo'o. So one way that Maui got rid of him was to ask Pele, Pele, let's throw some lava in the water and let's get him out. So that's kind of how the story of the Boiling Pots took place.
The story of Boiling Pots carries a special meaning for our community and to Hilo High School. Miss Kristen Iona, a Hilo High School teacher, tells us the significance and the lesson that we can learn from the mo'olelo of Boiling Pots.
Boiling Pots and Wailuku River and Mo'okuna is just one of the stories that's represented on our mural. We weave together lots of different peoples and characters and lessons. It just happened to be one of the lessons or one of the mo'olelo that we used in our mural. If you see the lizard eye, to me it's a reflection of how we can learn from it, from the ideas of forgiveness, loyalty, so much more, friendship, but also communication, looking at it by not seeing who is the bad person. Is there a bad person? If we could see it from all sides of the story, we can learn from it. And I think that's a very important lesson for all of us. We are always learning from the lesson of Wailuku River and Boiling Pots and Mo'okuna and Hina and Maui. They are all teaching us all the time. We have to just connect back to it and realize the story is there for us.
Boiling Pots basically starts a very big hidden gem because the water provides so much life, so much culture and stories that it starts. And the Boiling Pots Battle of Wailuku River, it started so many legends, mo'olelos of the Hawaiian culture, and it kind of just went all through Hilo. So that's a big hidden gem of this part.
Boiling Pots may be known as a tourist spot to many, but its cultural significance will remain an important part of our identity for years to come. This is Nathan Margasa from Hilo High School for Hiki No.
Welcome back to the second half of our Insights conversation with the candidates running for the Democratic nomination for State Senate District 19. This district now encompasses an area that includes Honouliuli and portions of Waipahu and Pearl City. This is an open seat because Clarence Nishihara is retiring. Now to the candidates. Henry Aquino has been serving as a member of the State House of Representatives since 2008 and is currently the chair of the Transportation Committee. He's a graduate of Waipahu High School, UH West Oʻahu, and Hawaii Pacific University. And Roger Clemente currently works for the state after a career in the hotel industry. Born in the Philippines, his family came to Hawaii when he was in elementary school. He's a graduate of Farrington High School and Hawaii Pacific University. Thank you both for being here tonight. Let's start off with the issues facing this district. What do you think is the biggest issue facing the district, and what would you do to help to work toward fixing it?
No, thank you for that question. I think, just based on just talking to a lot of the residents, they're concerned about the cost of living. They're concerned about jobs. They're concerned about making sure that they can provide for their families. And those are just issues that are very important. I'd like to continue to work on them. I'd like to continue just ongoing work. So that's what I like to do, and that's the biggest issues that we're facing today.
Okay, what do you think is the biggest issue when you're going out and talking to potential voters? What are you hearing from them?
Well, I think it's a variety of things. I'd like to put it in in a nutshell, the quality of life, which that means it's including also financial concerns, as well as simple as not getting quality sleep and being unsafe going out at night or anywhere. A lot of people mention about the noise coming from those vehicles that are very loud, like motorcycles, mopeds, and there's a lot of seniors in, I guess, in every area now. And they are concerned about the lack of quality of sleep because they're being constantly woken up at night. And also high cost of living is another issue that everyone have, which I have a lot of ideas that I may be able to, or I have ideas that would minimize those concerns, as well as job security, because as you know, we just went through the pandemic, and a lot of people are concerned about what if another one hits Hawaii.
I know that throughout the state, really, but in your district as well, there are a lot of homeless concerns. What would you do, and what do you think the legislature can specifically do to address this issue?
As far as the homeless concerns, it's a very, very difficult situation because there are different categories. I think the state should be given the authority, or the government should be given the authority to place the people that are not able to make their own decisions. Because if they're not able to make their own decision, it's for the public safety as well as theirs. And also there's people that are homeless who are trying hard to make ends meet, and they just can't make it because of cost of living so high. The government should step up with assisting those people, those two. And of course, there are people that chose to be. I talked to a lot of them, and some people prefer to be in that situation. And someone has to explain to those group of people that being outdoors is not a way to live.
Let's get your thoughts on the homeless situation, specifically in this district, and what you think the legislature can do to better help.
Yeah, it's just been an ongoing issue, and it requires further support, further coordination, stronger coordination between the city as well as the state. I think the expansion of Ohana zones to further provide avenues for some of these homeless individuals to get the support that they need. Wide variety, wide range of services that are provided at Ohana Zone. So possible further expansion, I think, down the road would help this situation currently in this district.
Mr. Clemente, you've previously run for the state legislature, but when you did that, you ran as a Republican. Why did you change your political party?
You know, to be honest with you, I was always a Republican, and I'll explain that. You know, when I was first grade in the Philippines, I left as a first grader in the Philippines. In our classroom, our teacher had posted a picture of Elvis Presley, because this was in the 60s, and also John F. Kennedy. And she talked about John F. Kennedy a lot. So I think I was the most Democrat person in my classroom when I migrated here to Hawaii. And you know, it was a learning process for me to experience the different parties, so where I can adapt to both, relate to both agendas.
Okay, but why did you decide then to switch your party? You feel like you've gone through a learning process and now you better align with democratic values? Is that
well, because originally I was a Democrat.
Okay, got it. Mr. Aquino, I'm interested, you've served in the State House for 14 years. Now you're running for Senate. Do you think that there should be term limits for lawmakers?
You know, I think that's a double-edged sword. I mean, obviously, you know, for a lot of members of the legislature as well as candidates, you know, we do have elections every 2 years. It's a public referendum that everyone can, you know, participate in the election process. And really, if there's a point where a certain candidate, a certain member is not doing their job, upholding their responsibilities of an elected official, then they will face that public referendum pretty much every 2 years. Term limits, you know, I think that's something that a lot of people have been talking about, and you know, personally, I think I'm open to that idea.
Okay, we've got some questions from the audience, and thank you so much for those of you who do write or call in. What is a skill that you feel like you can bring better than your competitor, and what's a skill that you feel like your competitor is better at? I don't know how well the two of you know each other, so perhaps let's focus on your strengths. What do you think that you uniquely bring to this position?
Well, I bring 14 years of legislative experience to the table, close to 18 years in the nonprofit sector. So, you know, I do have quite a bit of experience in working with our communities. And that's some of the strengths that I do bring. And, you know, the ability to work with all stakeholders on all different wide variety of issues are some of the strengths that I bring. In terms of my opponent, you know, he's a very nice guy, and he's someone that really cares about the community. You know, obviously, you know, he shared some of the issues that are important to him and others. And I think it's, you know, it's a noble calling for him to step up and to run for office.
Okay, very, very diplomatic. What skill do you feel that you bring to this race, perhaps better than your competitor, or just on your own? What do you think is the unique strength that you bring? And that the flip side of this, what skill do you bring that you feel like is that your competitor brings that is better?
Okay, well, at this moment in time, I can bring solutions to the problems, and I have fresh ideas, and I'm very non-political. And I have extensive experience in management in the hotel and other industries where I've learned a lot about handling situations where you have to handle the situation on the spot, where you don't have time to mingle with the issues. I know being a legislator, it probably would be new to me because I've never been an elected official before. But there's always a learning process, and I believe I can learn very quickly. If it was a job, say, like a pilot, when you have to make split-second decisions, then of course I would not even try to attempt to fly a plane without any experience. You know, as far as Henry, I've seen him many times. I've met him a few times, and he's a very nice, cordial individual. In fact, I know his family. I went to school with his uncle, actually. We graduated the same year.
Well, Hawaii, you never know where those connections pass or are align. Let's get back to the issues. Let's talk about crime in the district. What do you think? Do you hear the community members talk to you about that when you're going out and talking to constituents? What are their specific concerns, and what do you think the legislature specifically, because crime tends to be a county issue, but what do you think the legislature can do on that?
Well, public safety is always paramount for a lot of our residents throughout the whole entire district. From issues such as burglaries, just crimes that occur sometimes on a daily basis, unfortunately. And we're not the only ones that deal with these types of issues. Some of the things that we have heard are potential illegal gambling, again, some noise, some concerns, as well as some other abandoned vehicle, other issues of that sort, and just the type of activities that can possibly be part of things like that. So, I think what we've done in the legislature to deal with some of our ongoing issues with abandoned vehicles, we had a series of abandoned vehicle bills to address some of the issues that are facing not just Oʻahu, but statewide. Every county has a abandoned vehicle issue. But in terms of crime, we really want to make sure that our communities are safe. People are able to, take walks. They can really enjoy what the communities really provide, all the different amenities in our neighborhoods. And it's really important that people feel safe and people feel very strongly that, hey, I can go take a walk to the store, I can take a walk to the park, I can walk my pets without having the concern of anything possibly negative happen to them.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on crime in the district and how the legislature can better help?
Well, crime is something goes way back from beginning of time. So, but in our district, I think more police presence would help, and also a good. See, a lot of times we don't even know who our neighbors are. And I think if everyone knew one another, that would kind of help to spot those people that are going around the neighborhood. Because as you know, there's a lot of reports of thefts and other things like that. So like a very beyond a neighborhood watch. And I think the state legislators should come up with their own law enforcement in addition to the HPD. Because HPD, they're spread out too thinly. They don't have enough people to...
So like a citizen patrol, or what are you suggesting?
Well, they could expand on the sheriff's department to take care of some of the duties that the HPD are currently taking care of, to take them away from that, to go into the neighborhoods.
There's another audience question I want to get to. If you are elected, what is one goal you wish to achieve during your time in office? You did mention that, there is turnover. So if you did have just that one term, what's a specific goal? What would be your number one priority?
I'd like to improve, as I mentioned earlier, that our quality of life is highly impacted by a lot of negative things. And those are the things that I want to improve on, our quality of life, from simple things that are more difficult. I'd like to tackle those.
Okay, what do you say to this person? If you're elected, what is one goal you wish to achieve during your time in office?
I'd like to really focus on improving our public assets, our public infrastructure, whether it be our state roadways, our public schools, our state senior housing. There's many different public assets that the state has control over or owns throughout our whole entire district. And I would like, if I had a very short limited time, is to make sure that we can deliver on some of these needed funding and needed infrastructure improvements, just to make sure that we have these things that are for the benefit of our communities.
I want to ask you both about public corruption. Of course, there's been some very high-profile cases in the legislature, but also we see it DPP, and it seems that a lot of public offices, no matter where you look in this town, there seems to be a scandal of some sort. A lot of people get fed up with the political process. They say, forget it, they're all corrupt, I'm not participating. How do we restore that public trust, and how do we better balance that so that perhaps is more transparency necessary, fundraising limits, what have you? How do we restore that trust in government and root out that corruption?
It's a very good question, and I think this past session we tried to address that. The State House put together a working group made up of all different stakeholders who really feel that transparency needs to be improved. What the legislature had done, and part of it was really the pandemic as well, was to invite many others to the table during the legislative process. It became to a point where this past session it was a hybrid way of participating in the legislative process via Zoom and just different ways so our neighbor island residents can chime in and say whether they support or oppose certain legislation. I think this working group does have certain recommendations, and they're looking at the wide variety of things, whether it be limiting certain campaign activities during the session. There's many different options that I think to increase transparency, and I think that is one very big step that we need to take in order to create a better process for everyone to participate in.
Yeah, how do you think we restore public trust and root out some of the corruption that we've seen over the last few years?
Well, as a whole, I'd like to see the whole system be overhauled. One of them would be term limits, as like Henry had mentioned earlier. Term limits would probably decrease some of those body type dealings. And also there should be limits of donations. Right now, I believe it's 2,000 for businesses or individuals. I think it should be less than that. And I noticed that on the filing form, it asks for the place of employment. I think the state should randomly check to make sure that they're not that they're putting the correct workplaces and not working for a big corporation that they're just donating on their behalf, but actually donating from big companies. And term limits would be a good idea to start off with. Say two terms, you take off one term, if you want, you go back in again. I think that would eliminate a lot of, and also training for employees, training about those kind of things, from accepting gifts and things like that. We should have annual training for that. I know when I first went to the state and the city, when I started there, it was just a one-time training. And if you've been there for 15, 20 years, what you learned 20 years ago,
you've probably long forgotten it. Let's get to a few more issues as we only have about 8 minutes left. I'm interested on both of your positions on legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes.
Well, I think that's something that we're studying at this point and looking at the financial impacts that could potentially have if it were to go in that direction. Personally, I don't feel that we should move in that direction, but I'm very much open to listening and seeing what that potential study in terms of tax revenue, in terms of how it could impact our criminal justice system. I'm open to seeing what the studies will bring out.
What is your position on legalizing recreational marijuana?
Well, if it affects a person's driving ability, if it slows their reaction time, then I would not be in favor of it.
Okay.
Because I've known people who used it or uses it. One of the things that may affect their ability is it slows things down for them. So if they're driving, it could be a hazard for themselves and for the other people. it could have a high impact on the tax revenue, but I'm looking at the safety of the community.
You both have talked about quality of life issues tonight and affordability. I'm interested to know what specific ideas you have to diversify our economy. We hear a lot about our over-reliance on tourism, but what are the next steps? What do you think that we should do as a state? What should we be investing in?
I think diversification is, we need that in terms of making sure that we have future sustainability and making sure that we have a strong economy moving forward for the future. A few of the things that I would like to see is a stronger emphasis, a stronger reinvestment in public infrastructure. In addition to that, really focusing on our public schools and our university system, mainly because for UH, we are centrally located in the middle of the Pacific, whereby it's very strategic, and we're the gateway to both the East and the West. And I think capitalizing on where we are and what we have, I think is very much great opportunities, I think, for our state to move away or to pivot forward. Tourism will always be an industry that I think we can continue to support, but I think we need to diversify to ensure, again, our future sustainability.
What do you think are the best areas for us to diversify in as a state as we try to make the pivot that he's talking about so that we're not over-reliant on just one industry?
Yeah, I agree that we do rely on tourism a lot, and I've been in that business for over 35 years. I think agriculture would be one thing, that because we're importing a lot of things that we could locally grow here, and that would keep some of the prices down. And I also would like to see more technology that be implemented here, because it doesn't really affect the tourism or the atmosphere. If you have, or also manufacturing. This is Hawaii is a perfect place to perhaps develop a solar cars, possibly.
Okay, technology. I'm interested, we've talked about some of the issues and we have a little bit of your backgrounds, but what is something that the public doesn't know about you that they wish they knew as they go into the ballot box? Or fill out the ballot at home, rather, now that we're all mail-in, but there are a few that still like to vote in person. But what do you wish people knew about you that they might not know?
Well, I'm very caring. I'm very compassionate individual, and I care about the other people. That's why I decided to run, because I like to be able to make a difference in their lives, or positive changes. I just love, I love our community, and I'd like to see it thrive better than what I'm experiencing now.
Okay. What do you wish what do you wish the voters knew about you that they might not be able to glean from your website or from your resume?
There's just so many issues that really connect us, even though a lot of these issues may have some negative connotations. I think some of these issues really bind us together, and I think, each of us have a calling. We each have a way forward, how we can contribute. And, I feel that, by running for office, I'm doing my part. I want to make a difference as well. And, I'm just really excited at the opportunity to continue the work that we've been doing for the last 14 years. And I just really feel very passionate about caring for our communities, making sure that we can deliver resources that's needed, and really providing an ear for people to, people that they can talk to, and just being that individual who can really step up and serve.
I'm interested in what kind of you talked about being a good communicator, what kind of a lawmaker you see yourself as, when it comes to engaging with the community. There are some, people who feel like they can't call their lawmaker, they can't call their legislature. How do you make sure that you are accessible enough to the people that you're serving?
I try my best to be as accessible as possible. In fact, there are neighbors of mine that reach out to me on occasion, and some of them pretty regularly. Issues wide-ranging from neighbor to neighbor, which typically government doesn't really get involved with, but even city and county issues as well as state issues. These are all encompassing things that I think, really connects all of us. So, I think, moving forward, I just really want to be that vessel to really be, to let people know that there's always someone listening, there's always someone available. During the pandemic, having the ability and the opportunity to help people get their unemployment checks. It was a very eye-opening experience for me, and just seeing and hearing and really feeling emotionally just some of the things that people were going through during that time. It was just an immense opportunity, and I feel very privileged that I was at least invited to be a part of that process.
I'll give you the last word on that. What kind of a lawmaker would you be, and how would you make sure that you would be available to your constituents?
Well, I've worked in the service industry for many years, where you have to be accessible. You have to solve the concerns. And I would be responsive to all the people in the district. In fact, I wanted to add this, it is my wish that for all the people who take their oath of office in January will maintain the communication with their people in the district as if they were campaigning. A lot of us go around house to house, listening to the concerns, and I hope that every decision they make, they take the people's concerns very seriously and accordingly. Because, I ask that all the people who takes office on January 4, please don't forget the people in your district and the state of Hawaii.
That is a good reminder. Thank you for joining us tonight. We thank our guests, the Democratic candidates for State Senate District 19, Roger Clemente and Henry Aquino. Next week on Insights, another doubleheader in the State Senate. We'll hear from the Democratic candidates vying for District 6, covering parts of South and West Maui, and District 11 in Manoa and Makiki Heights here on Oʻahu. Do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.